Well, let's get going. First, the Anaglyph Jukebox. Hi, Joe. Now, Paul Hutchins 3D Journeys. Thank you. Okay, we shall move on. Our guest this week is Andrew Park. And do you pronounce that with an E, Park? Well, I'm going to say Park. Andrew is a cinematographer with many film credits and was instrumental in developing the stereoscopic 3D camera system used for Night of the Living Dead 3D. Before we begin, if you want to see it, unfortunately in 2D, it's actually quite good. I watched it last night. If you have Amazon Prime, just search for it, and then you're going to have to pay for it like $5 or something. And this way, here's the other thing: you're going to pay $5 for it, and somehow Andrew's going to get a quarter of a cent in like 20 years. So do him that favor too. Do us all a favor. Watch it. If you could find it, now we're going to find out a lot about that movie. Andrew, are you on mic? Can you communicate with us?
The producer, Tom Coleman, said it was his idea. I didn't know anything about 3D. I was shooting 2D, films. And the producer, Tom Coleman, said, let's shoot 3D. So I went out and did all my homework, and I met with all the stereographers that were known, and Dan was one of them. And Dan was the one that was willing to do it within their budget, and to try some things that nobody had done before. Because this is 2005, and people were still shooting movies on film then. And we were going to try to shoot electronically. And so we partnered with Dan after meeting with a couple people and made a deal with him. And we built the 3D rig, because originally we thought, oh, we're going to shoot on the F900, which is, had just come out a few years before, and it could shoot 24p. But there was another camera called the Sony Z1U that could shoot 25p for Europe. And we shot side-by-side tests with F900 and the Z1U. And the F900 was clearly better. But the Z1U was really good, and it fit our budget, and it fit the idea that we could shoot handheld with a 3D rig. Because if you put two F900s on a beam splitter rig, it's going to be hard to handhold if it's possible at all. And as you can see by this credit there, Jerry Hill did Steadicam with this. So we had Steadicam and handheld. And the Z1U was a HDV camera. It ran on little tapes like mini DV, but it was HDV. And it's probably 420, 8-bit. And back then, we didn't know about 8 and 10-bit that much, because the F900 essentially was shooting 8-bit. So, is anybody there?
Yep. Oh no, listening.
Let me know if I've lost you.
No, I was sleeping. No, you did great. This is very interesting. That's fun, really. Nobody's going to fall asleep during this. I only joking, man. This is excellent. Great story.
So we went ahead, and we worked. There was a post house, which might be in these credits. Can't remember. It was out in Burbank, and we did all these tests, and we rezzed out the film and everything. And the idea was we had to go out to anaglyph. There was no digital at that time. There was not yet a Real D. So we had to go out to anaglyph, and Lionsgate was on board with that. So, and we tested doing it with whatever Kodak Premiere stock. But then to save money, they ended up going with Agfa stock without consulting us, and the Agfa threw the color off. So I never felt that the colors in the prints matched the glasses perfectly. But that's another story, because probably none of you are going to see those film prints. They made about 100 anaglyph film prints, and yeah, I wasn't thrilled. But Lionsgate wasn't really even aware that they could convert this film to a 3D Blu-ray, because we shot it, obviously with the left and right element. So you get a 2D version, and you can make any of the 3D things. It could be Real D or Dolby or whatever. But they didn't really understand that. They thought we shot it in an anaglyph format, which I didn't even know was possible. But I met some guys that would do that. They would actually shoot with a single lens system with a beam splitter, and they would have a red and a blue filter, and would actually shoot an anaglyph, or with a ARRI 2C in the old days.
Yeah, it's amazing that somebody up the path that didn't ask the question, hey, how did you guys shoot this? Like you said, so obviously it was more than one person making that decision. That's very interesting.
Yeah, and then in those days we shot on those HDV tapes, and Different by Design, which reminds me is in the credits there. all the tapes had to be converted to HD cam tapes, which, so we shot on these little tapes and then they transferred them to the big tapes that you would shoot, on a higher quality camera. And that's how they had to do the online post,
Yeah, it says
because
3D
they
post
couldn't
production.
even do
Yeah,
it in Final Cut 7. Well, maybe they did use Final Cut, but they did it from the HD cam ingest.
and just got it. Now the 3D, so 3D, but no,
But it costs
Dimension,
like a fortune. And all those tapes, there was a pile of all the HD cam tapes, and Different by Design recycled them about 5 years later.
interesting. Now the 3D post production, Dimension 3 with a registered trademark. What is
That's
Dimension
yeah,
3?
that's Dan's company,
That's Dan's company,
Dan
Dimension 3.
Sims' company. He did. He was the stereographer, and I met with him, and I spent a lot of time with him. And that was when I joined the LA 3D Club, is because Dan would kept it like a dark secret about 3D. He's like, the magician never reveals his tricks, but his pride would always get the better of him because I'd ask him a million questions, and then he would reveal things because he had to, because I basically started to figure it out. And because he was like, you just do the lighting and figure out, camera placement, and I'll handle the stereo. And for the
Yeah.
most part, that's what we did. Um, but he also did the post. So I know our stereo alignment monitor, of which we had one, and I helped him build it. It was my idea to do well, I had stolen the idea from someone else I had met, that to use two LCD monitors, which were pretty new. We were still using CRTs 20 years ago. Two LCD monitors with a beam splitter, so he could view in 3D on set. Because otherwise, he didn't know that he could even do stereo alignments using a monitor system. So he built that. He had like a wooden box with two LCD monitors with a 45-degree beam splitter. And I think on the second to last day, it was on the truck on a C-stand on the lift gate, and somebody knocked into it when they were loading, fell off the lift gate and smashed. And so the last day or
Ouch.
two, he would just put charts out there, and he would align to the charts, left and right separately. But he couldn't see an overlay. So he couldn't see the alignments. But anyway, he did alignments in post, and he used a file format that I can't even remember. It wasn't uh what were they transferring film to? DPX files. He was using something, I can't remember now. There was a weird file format that no computer will read anymore, because we have a hard drive with that film in it. No software will open those files.
Yeah, well, and many more will be in that same condition years from now. That's too bad. That's terribly. Let's move along with these. So I want to go quickly through these because I that was kind of a boring screen we had on. Well, you were talking very interesting stuff, so I just want to keep with this so I can move it out. Okay, so we know there
We
was
can take
film.
questions as we go, because
Okay,
yeah,
I'll try to do that. That was what you were talking about for the HD3 cam,
the
right?
HC3 cam is the thing we built. And originally Dan wanted to do like a beam splitter this way. And we were like, no, we want to
Oh,
be
okay. Wait,
handheld.
this way. You know what it is? I don't think people could see it, so I'm gonna go. There we go. Please.
We were like this. So it would be one camera shooting straight and one camera shooting into the beam splitter. Well, one's shooting straight through the beam splitter and one's shooting the reflection, but it would be on a flat beam, like in an L. But I said, no, we want to shoot vertical like this so that we can walk through a doorway.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
we want to also be able to mount it on a Steadicam, and that would never balance. So we came up with the idea of shooting the top camera over top, and just yeah, and then we went with the Z1U Sony to make it smaller and lighter. But then, okay, how do you synchronize these cameras? They don't have Genlock. So we used oh, what's the bloody thing called? The little stereo synchronizer.
That'll do. It's the stereo synchronizer.
It's no, it's
Google
a
stereo
Lank,
synchronizer.
The Lank Shepherd. Sorry.
Oh, yes, indeed.
The Lank
Everybody has.
Shepherd. Yeah, Lank
Mhm.
Shepherd. Thank you, Dave. We used the Lank Shepherd to synchronize it. So, but we also used the Lank Shepherd pull focus, which was really weird. So the focus puller would hit a button closer, further, and go. That's how we pull focus, and it was not very precise, and it made him crazy. And also they had to reboot the cameras like certainly every setup, but sometimes between takes they had to reboot to get them to reclock. And the Lang Shepherd would show you the offset and the shutters because you need absolute shutter synchronization. Which I came to find in later years, Genlock it may not mean shutter lock. You need shutter lock. Genlock should mean shutter lock, but doesn't always. And I'll get back to that if you want.
Great hint for all those kids out there.
The shutters have to be absolutely scanning in sync. If it's off at all, you get a massive headache. The second film, we probably shot some shots a little out of sync, but
And the second film,
I haven't gotten any letter complaints yet.
And the second film name?
The second film was Night of the Living Dead Reanimation.
Gotcha.
Which was around 2010, 2012. And then we shot that on Canon cameras. Canon partnered with us, used the Canon XF 305 and the 105 on B camera. We ran 2 rigs because we had so much to do so quickly. And that budget was about 115 grand. The budget on this was about 350 grand. So it was,
wow.
We almost didn't make the second film because we didn't think we had enough money. But Andrew Divoff, who took the place of the other fellow who was busy, what's his name? Sid Haig. He took his. This is a this is a while back, right? So I have to remember everything. The Andrew Divoff sort of deferred part of his salary, so it allowed us to shoot. But that led to a dispute afterwards because he said the film went out wide and everyone's watching it. He's like, I want my money now. And they were like, well, we never received any because the distributor got it. And the distributor said, well, it all went into Princeton advertising. We didn't make any money, which is a common thing to hear from distributors.
Yeah,
I hope no distributors on here. I don't want to disparage them.
No business, but like show business. That's the way it works. So okay, that's great. So now your experience, so you didn't have experience initially with 3D, right?
No, I joined the 3D Club in LA, the LA 3D Club, which was the Southern California Stereo Club at that time. I think they switched around that time, the name. And they were a wealth of information. All the information that Dan tried to keep secret from me, they shared with me. And I soaked it up and I started, entering their competitions and stuff and learned a lot about stereo photography. So when we did the second one, Jeff came to me and said, can you be the stereographer and the DP? And I was like, that's a really bad idea. You really need to separate those two things because it's director, because it's not just, it was DP operator, Well, I said, look, if I have an operator and then I'm just DP and I'm in charge of lighting and 3D, I can do that. And I can be by the monitor and do alignments. So that was what we did. And it was.
Now communicating, because obviously when you're shooting in 3D, it's a way different experience than shooting in 2D because things like lens flare and all that kind of stuff that you use is now all of a sudden you can't really, you can't do things the way potentially your communication with the director is trying to get at and trying to explain to him why certain shots are not going to work and certain shots will work.
Well, the good thing about a beam splitter is you can have a variable interaxial. So you can go in and do macro shots, really tight shots. Whereas like when Hitchcock did Dial M for Murder, there's prop shots of him with the giant telephone because they had a fixed interaxial and they could not shoot close-ups of a telephone dial without it ripping your head off. So they made a big telephone to photograph with the rig. I don't know. So, but we didn't have that. The downside with the beam splitters, you have polarization issues, ghosting issues. If you shoot a car and the reflection on, because you get a slight polarization from the beam splitter, and there's ways to take that out a little bit, but it creates problems. Now you should know in the original film, it was since we knew we were going out anaglyph in the film prints, and back then we still did film prints in theaters. We were right on the edge of coming out with digital exhibition. But we deliberately in the art direction made everything as monochromatic as possible. And there's a scene like in the living room where there's an orange throw blanket. And we shot the scene and then somebody said, that blanket is not gray. Like instead of wearing blue jeans, they wear.
Yeah, I got you.
So they were the colors in the wardrobe and in the art direction were all somewhat monochromatic, and this was to avoid having retinal rivalry in the anaglyph. So it was pretty good. But then we had, so I think that in post they desaturated that scene. I mean, we could have, the movie is not monochromatic. It's just somewhat monochromatic. I don't know. It was not shot black and white, and it's not exhibited black and white. But to accommodate the anaglyph, we tried to play down primary colors.
And so just one last question, getting back to blocking, and people don't know block. It's where actors and actresses have to
Yeah.
be to get the camera angle.
Where they are
covered.
in the
Yeah,
set.
where they are on the set.
Where the camera is.
So in blocking, when you're dealing with that with the director, in other words, certain things are going to work, and maybe a director's vision is he wants something else to work a certain way. Did you have any? You had to plan that out, right? Did you do like depth
Yeah.
maps for the whole show?
Well, I haven't seen the movie in a while, but most of the film was shot in a house from 1890 that was in Piru, which was quite a drive. And it was summertime. We only had 8 hours of darkness, which was a problem for the exteriors. That's why in many shots you'll see the sky is pretty blue because it's sunrise. And we're desperately trying to finish the scenes before the sun comes up. And I also have a funny story about the air conditioning. But the house was old and small. But fortunately, I said to the owner, I said, "Do you mind if I screw stuff into the ceiling?" And I go, "Of course, afterwards some guys will plaster it and paint it." And he goes, "I'd love to have this place plastered and painted. You can drill into the ceiling all you want." So back then we had Kino tubes, which were fluorescent tubes, not LED. LED hadn't been invented yet. I mean, for motion picture lighting. So we put Kino bulbs on the ceiling. Now, I asked later if they had gone back and spackled and painted the place, and they were like, "What? We didn't do
I was
that."
going to say it wasn't in the budget, man. Sorry. Here's your, but that would have
But
been the thing. Here's your
there's a
spackle. Here's your
Geico
knife.
commercial that uses that same house. It's the one where they're like stupid and they run into the barn with all the chainsaws. Anyway, that's the same house. The guy that I forget, I think the guy that owned it was a policeman or something, but he was a really nice guy, and they moved him out for 2 weeks or whatever when we shot there. So it was a great location. The air conditioning story was, I'm not going to mention any names, but there was a production manager. All I know is one night we were shooting a night exterior and the generator ran out of fuel. And back then the generator ran everything. We couldn't really plug into the house even because of the old electricity. And but especially for the night exterior, we had large units to light up large areas. And it went, you know, we're like, and they're like, well, we just gassed it up. They have to check it. They have to put a stick in there into the tank. And they're like, there's nothing in there. We're like, how? They go, we filled it last night. How could we be out of fuel already? And then they go, okay, well, the production managers only gave us $100 or whatever, $50, whatever it was. So it didn't
Should have been 100, as it turns out.
But then what happened was he was sleeping in the RV or one of the trailers in the day, and it was like 100 in the day. So he ran the generator and the air conditioning all day and ran all the fuel out. But he didn't tell anybody, and he didn't admit to it for a long time.
That's entertainment.
We didn't have
No.
a pumper truck, so they had to take the main generator and drive it to a fueling station, which was like 10, 15 miles each way. Something, it was far. It took an hour and a half to get back. And we were like flipping out because our schedule was this tight. We had no room not to shoot. And that was a big deal. But anyway, finally the production manager fessed up that he was running that air conditioner all day. He goes, I had no idea it would use so much fuel.
Yeah, like I said, that's entertainment.
Fortunately, the other thing I learned is not to eat lunch with zombies because their hair was all stuck on and would fall. And so I wanted to get in the lunch line before the zombies went through the lunch line because their hair would fall into the.
You reminded me. I actually have some shots. I did a zombie wedding for E! Channel back in I think it was 2012. Just remind me, I had some of those shots. You're right. Catering gets really messy with zombies, no?
Yeah.
You're better off just.
I don't want to disparage any zombies out there.
Overeating something. But so let's just finish up on this one. You got a lot of good stuff to go to. Okay. So other than the air conditioning stuff, so you put some bolts in the ceiling. So it's a tight place to work.
Drywall screws.
The drywall screw. Yeah, very good. Yeah, you want to set it just in case the guy comes after you,
we
because
put
I'm
little
sure those
baby
holes are
plates.
still there. So working within with because that's a pretty big rig. So working within those, thank you. So working within those tight confines. Um, and again, you were not really able to live monitor, right?
Yes, yeah, we invented the monitoring system
With
because
that little, yeah,
if Max Penner's on here, I visited Max Penner and Steve Sclair, who are the other big stereographers for Hollywood films, and I saw what Max had, that he had rigged two LCD monitors. And I
yes,
said
yes,
to
you said that.
Dan, I said, Dan, you should know what Max. I didn't mean to be a spy, but we needed a monitoring system. We wanted to be able to monitor in 3D on set, but it also helped him with the uh, alignments of aligning the two cameras. So it worked out really well. So we did, and they were like 5-inch monitors. So we had a very small, but I think we had two CRTs, a left and a right also. And I think if you see the behind the scenes, you'll see that. It was two Sony studio monitors that were like, I don't know, 10-inch monitors that were cathode ray tube. And you could have a left and a right, but that wouldn't tell you anything about the stereo. You just make sure there were no bogeys happening, in either camera.
The most painful thing about this whole conversation is that I would love to see the stereo work. Um, I guess you can get on, I guess on eBay, there might be a few, because I looked on Amazon, you can't get it there. The actual DVD, because it wasn't a Blu-ray, right? It was a DVD.
It was yes, I don't think it ever came out on Blu-ray, and that's really too bad. So there is no stereo Blu-ray yet. But as I said earlier, I think the rights revert back to them in 2 years. But if Lionsgate finds out they can make revenue from it, they may not. They may re-up the contract. I don't know. But the idea would then to be put out a stereo Blu-ray.
Would love
But
to see
that
it.
wasn't invented back then. It was just DVD, and it was
Now you,
and DVD, and I think it had 2D and 3D on the same disc. I have one around here somewhere over here. But um yeah, so what was the point of that?
well, watching an anecdote, that's it's complicated, especially now that was set up. It was designed around CRTs, right? Time to get sent out. I mean, there wasn't a lot of big monitors around at that time. There was still a lot of CRTs, right? Tube
I
TVs.
think
So the
people
gamma is different,
that
right?
was very early on even for HD. I think most people didn't have
Yeah,
HD monitors then.
right, right. No, I mean, so I just wonder how it translates in from that technology to it, because obviously the color pattern is a little different. The whole color gamut is different on the LCD, the newer TVs, right? So that transition could be interesting. It may not kill it, but it's certainly going to be a difference, right? Because it's just not the same.
Well, again, we had both. We had a left and a right monitor.
Yep.
I think we had two rigs now that I think about it. And I invited Joe Satel to come on here. I don't know if he's here. He was on the second
Yeah. Just
camera.
watch that Joe. Watch for Joe to show us if you see him.
And I
Everybody.
invited Jeff Broadstreet also, but I haven't heard back from him. I have to check my phone. But
He must have had something better to do on a Saturday afternoon. The heck with him. No,
well, I
no.
didn't invite him until a half hour ago, and he
Well,
has to work at night, so I don't know if he's up yet. But
okay. So maybe we should move out of anything other than that. So I'm kind of at a loss because I had to imagine what it looks like in 3D. Because there were some really good scenes in there, man. The ones through the car windows. I know there's a lot going on there that probably would really translate into pretty terrifying 3D, right? Because you haven't seen a film. Well, the
it's been
naked
a
lady,
while.
the naked lady getting her brains eaten. You got to remember that scene.
Yeah,
Wow,
I think Joe shot
stuck in
most
my
of
head.
that. I think Joe shot most of the stuff in the barn.
Then
That
it
was
was in the car outside where they're trying to get in.
in the
This is not
car,
a
right?
spoiler alert, but
Yeah. Uh,
you know what? Now people are going to be looking for that on eBay. Now that I said there was a naked lady getting her brains eaten, they're going to disappear quickly. I'm going to have to get one right now.
there was some
Anyway,
drama with her running off, uh, being upset about the zombies treating her or something. I don't know, but we did it.
no,
A
that
lot of
was a
things that
terrifying
kind of
scene.
came together.
All kidding aside, she was trapped in the car. I was terrifying, man. That's why I can't. Don't look at the reviews on Rotten Tomatoes and stuff because don't really. It has been said that critics are legless men who teach running. So it's actually not bad unless I don't even know how they came up with such bad reviews because There was a couple things with the acting, but you know what?
Well,
It got the
like
point
I
across.
said,
It
I
was
think it's
terrifying.
one of the best 12-day movies I ever shot.
There you
So
go, man.
it's a
Right.
very low budget $350,000 movie, and I think they compare it to $100 million movies, and it's just
Please.
it's not a fair comparison. But when you pay for your ticket, it's the same. So the audience doesn't know that it's done that cheap.
Agreed. Agreed. And like I tell you, I, I, I didn't know what to expect. You know, exploitative movies. No, it was a different take on Night of the Living Dead. It's not an actual, recreation of that. It's like
It was a
inspired by
reimagining.
a
I think it says
reimagine. We could say that reimagine. It was great. Man, I can't believe they did it for that little amount of money. I think it
yeah,
drew like a million and a half or something like that. So somebody made money back, but not you. Anyway, maybe we can
no.
change that. We'll start buying them on eBay, and you'll get. I told you, get you half a cent in about 20
No,
years.
I don't have any. I'm below the line, so I get
That's it.
nothing. Only actors and producers get money
Yeah,
after the sale, and it won't happen until the rights revert back because I don't think Lionsgate's ever shared anything, and I'm not certain. I shouldn't say that because I don't know. The
I
actors
think.
might get a few
Can
small.
can you share your screen? And I think maybe some of those pictures are locked. I just got a message that came across. I usually don't read them, but from Jay, I have to pay attention.
You want to share my screen?
Yeah, you have any shots from that shoot? Any shots from that shoot?
I'm going to show you this later. There's a video I want to show you. We want to make a sequel to the worst movie of all time. Why would anyone do that? All right. Let me just see. All right. Okay, this picture here is Jeff with the rig. So those are the two Z1U cameras into a beam splitter. I don't know. Can you see my cursor?
Yeah, I can see it, course. It's okay.
So this is in that old house. And,
Ah,
and this is the later film. This is with the Canon cameras. And this is the Hurricane rig, which was made by Alistair Chapman, an English fellow. And we still have that rig and want to use it. This is a different movie. This is Attack of the 50-Foot Cheerleader, which was shot with red cameras. But I'm going to go here. And this is Run, which is in Brooklyn. This is the Brooklyn part. That's on top of a brownstone. And this is Brooklyn, and this is L.A. Yeah, Brooklyn. And that's Andrew Divoff. So this is essentially the sequel, which was 2010, 2012 in there. And you can see we have these smaller Canon cameras, and there's a beam splitter behind Mr. Divoff's head. Yeah, but we're able to. Oh, that's a different film. That is Attack of the 50-Foot Cheerleader. That's the Attack of the 50-Foot Cheerleader.
now these are all on DimensionWorks3D.com, right?
Yeah, and this is just some music video I did. And that's Ray Zone. I don't know if the New Yorkers ever met Ray Zone, but he was a great guy.
Oh yeah, yeah. A lot
And
of people know Ray.
Ray appears very briefly as a dead guy in a coffin in the reanimation in the sequel, and unfortunately he passed away about 2 years later. This is in Korea. Um,
Well, this is
that's a
great.
very hyper stereo there.
Yep.
Uh,
I guess you picked the because Ari didn't have anything digital at
this
that
is
time,
one I
right?
did in Cape Cod. It was this Shockwave Dark Side. It was about a battle on the dark side of the moon, and we shot it in the sand pit for the moon. So there's just sand in all the gear, and it was we had to deal with Cape Cod weather in the early spring. And
Well,
I
we
did a
got.
thing called Evil Bong 3D, which is Charlie Band, and they only wanted to bring me in for a day to set up the rig, and then they realized they needed a stereographer for the whole time because they didn't have any money. And then this is the later film. This is so you can see the two rigs. So we had a dolly. Look at that. But this is the XF 305 and the XF 105, and then you see the lower camera. One camera is below. The rig. There was a way to invert the rig, put the camera over top, but here we went with this rig was built with the one camera on the bottom. And these are frame grabs and there's the two rigs. There's Joe and Dennis, the two operators. So I had to have operators so I could be stereographer and DP, which on this film. And yeah, this is like operating off a monopod. And here's Steadicam. So it made the rig small enough that we could do that instead of being like locked on a dolly at all times. We wanted to have a variety. So
Have you tried anything with any the newest stuff that's around like this? I don't have it in front of me. I put it in the car already. The Beam Pro. It's a little. Basically, it looks like a cell phone, the size of a cell phone. With
I saw something on Cine D about somebody came out with a little beam splitter for shooting VR, but I don't understand because VR you kind of need to be 180. I don't know if John Christopher's on here, but he wants to do a 180, a dual, like using the Canon R5C and the stereo lenses. The
well, these are really simple. It only
well,
came out about a month or two ago. They were like I'm holding. This is about the size of it. It's the size of an Android phone, and it shoots interesting. It's a. Let's
and
put it
it
this way:
has two
low budget
lenses,
stuff. Yeah, two
and
lenses.
they're
Two
about
lenses.
50 millimeter IO.
Yes, that thing, that
Yeah,
gadget.
I've seen that. I don't have it. Dave Starkman showed me that. I don't know if he's here. Yeah, there's one. Bob has one.
Yeah, you
I
know
I
what?
played around with Dave Starkman's. I'm really interested in that camera, but I think it's you know, I don't know. It's like a 20 millimeter lens. It's very wide. So I don't know that the video quality is up to what we need it to be. Because now if we're going to shoot 3D, they need to be, 422 10-bit to be Netflix approved. So not that Netflix is going to pick it up, but I think we need a 422 10-bit on each eye and in
I mean, I'm
4K.
just saying for low budget stuff. Like what I'm saying is what you guys did was amazing, but low budget people, this is like the perfect thing for them. And because you're it's almost impossible to shoot a bad picture with it. I've been shooting it for video. I just shot last week with Billie Eilish. I did the show over at Madison Square Garden. Just for fun. I shot with, and I'm pretty impressed with what I got, even in the dark with that silly thing. But nonetheless, it's something viable for low budget folks at this point. It opened up an area. Like I tell you, the guys this week, and I mentioned it at the beginning. Our friends over there who were doing Nosferatu, whatever that is. Nosferatu. That's all I can say. The Dracula thing from 100 years ago.
Nosferatu.
And that, thank you very much. Appreciate that. I
I
can use
did a
all the help I can get.
Nosferatu film too, but it was in 3D. But
So yeah, so as like I say, those guys are shooting with the simplest stuff, because as you well know, it doesn't matter what you're shooting with. If you get the point across, if you get it, if you
story
get
and
the audience
performance.
and thank you. That's the real goal at the end of the day. But I thank you for digging into the technical stuff. We got a lot of folks here that learn a
No,
lot of that
the
technical.
X Beam looks really cool, and I thought about grabbing one.
It's so cheap, it's worth just fussing with it. You know what I
The
mean? It's like,
problem, the Fuji W3 is old, and the
yeah,
sensor isn't good in low light. So this is much better in low light. So it's good for shooting stuff that's close to you because it's got the kind of narrow interaxial, and and it's wide. But for wide scenics, I don't know.
oh
I
no,
think that will work with its limitations. Yeah.
yeah, you're not kidding. Work with its limitations, as you said. But you know what? We're moving on. I want to give people a little time to chat, during the after party. But just one last thing, right? Well, I got you. One or two funny stories about Sid Haig.
Oh, me?
Sid Haig, right? We
Oh,
we
the main thing is I remember talking to him at lunch, and remember we were shooting like nights, and it was over at Sable Ranch. We were shooting the old Parts of the West house. I forget. I think we had set a fire in there. I think it was that film where we lit the guy on fire. But uh, he was talking about making Spider Baby. Spider Baby was his first movie that got him started, which was like 1962, and it's very low budget, black and white by Jack Hill. And we want to make a remake of that actually, and we have the rights to do it. But when Sid passed, I don't know what's happening with that.
the
Um,
Kickstarter's in there. Just went.
yeah.
Something came by in the
So
chat. Good.
the so Sid had Spider Baby candies. I remember, but I never saw them. But he said they were distributing Spider Baby candies. Like,
Oh, excellent.
uh,
So now we're gonna do. Wait, here's what we're gonna do.
this is the Impact dance thing I did, which was pretty cool actually.
Do
With
that. You know what? Yeah, let's see a bit of this, and I'm gonna throw you to the after party. Or if you, I'll
so
lead you
this
to the after party, shall we say? Yeah.
so this is Corman, and we did a film called Attack of the 50-Foot Cheerleader for
Now, who
Epic.
are these two girls around Corman? Are they
Well, it's a
stars
good
in the
thing it
movie?
says there,
Are
Jenna
they in the movie?
Sims and Olivia Alexander. I think Olivia sells pot now. She has a pot company. Jenna is probably still acting. She was like Miss Georgia or something. That this was her first film. This was at the screening downtown at this theater.
Which was the 50-foot woman, or neither of them?
Jenna. Well,
And
no,
Janet?
actually, well, technically it's Jenna, but then in the end, they're both 50 feet tall, and they have to
Ah,
go in the
God,
stadium.
I gotta go. I gotta dig that one out. Because
Well,
anything
it's
that Corman
it'd be
touches.
hard pressed to find it in 3D. It won an award downtown at the 3D Film Festival for the stereo, but it was made for the Epic channel, and Epic had no way of showing, squeezed side by side or anaglyph or anything. So they released it in 2D only. It was never released. It was only that screening that I helped arrange at that 3D film festival where people were able to see it in 3D.
You see,
Even though we went to the trouble of working with this big beam splitter and red cameras to make it,
hey,
so
hey, listen, you want to lose more money? I'll give you a good way.
yeah.
Wouldn't it be a great film festival of films of stuff you cannot see any other way? That it just they go like, you can't buy it on Amazon, you can't find it anywhere else. Like you do film festivals that way, like like they used to do a double header, a double feature. You don't think there'd be enough interest in that? I think there would be. I absolutely think in New York, I'd almost be willing to fall wall a place and just buy a place for a day and see if it worked. But anyway, that's another story.
Let me take it to the beginning. This is the film we want to make. This is proof of concept. All right, hold on.
No life has been discovered on any other planet. Earth is our only rival.
He first attacked this Earth in 1953.
I am archaeologist Professor Mailong Tuka. The Roman invasion was launched in 1953 from an ex-Nazi moon base.
You are savage, barbarian, non-Roman, non-Roman.
We want peace, Roman.
It is only the one called Alice that I want to see.
Outside our sanctuary, though.
They says I got this like psychotronic latent dream projection.
Stop! You are making my helmet hurt.
The Roman did exploit weak-minded human collaborators.
And no goofing off, nerd human soldier.
Right, no goofing off. This is Mailong Tuka.
My name is Alice One.
I record this in the year of 1960.
Nearly 7 years since the last attack by Roman.
Are you saying this is an ape robot?
Wait, what?
Been attacked.
The dome has been hit. In this 73 incursion, we repelled the Romans.
Yeah, 1973. The clones are little monsters.
In 2053, he is back.
The girl Alice
He
again.
must calculate the human woman
Suppose I were human. Alice again.
that meets on his rograph.
I am sent from the Great Guidance. I was birthed human, but programmed on the rograph. Surrender now.
We will never surrender. Roman.
They'll clone me. In case Roman comes back.
Part robot, part ape, all monster.
All right.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. You gave me a new response when I'm annoyed with people. You're making my helmet hurt.
Yeah.
I'm keeping that one, chat pal. Because that is great. Because I get into a lot of those already. You're making my helmet hurt. Anyway, next time you hear it, you know where to put the credit to Andrew.
New York, so good they named it twice. New York, all the scandal and the vice. I love it, New York, now isn't it a pity? What they say